hit the record button. Okay, so there's a few things I want y'all to lock into your memory about iterables. Number one. Oh, this is a Ruby one. Ruby REPL. Why am I in a Ruby REPL? Let's find out. Let's get out of there. Cool. Get rid of this. First thing. Your iterables or your applicatives.
Are you trying to share your screen?
Yep, I am, and I'm not. Am I? Thank you. The first thing, applicatives are all non-mutative. Who knows what that means? Junior.
It's not going to change your array. It's going to keep everything the same.
It's not necessarily just an array, but yeah, it will be an array.
Whatever data you're messing with.
Exactly. Non-mutative means in general that you're not changing it. Unless you're explicitly changing it. So for example, dot push is an example of something that is mutative, right? So if I have a dot push, let's say I do let my array equals 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If I said my array dot push, I don't know, 9999999, and then I console.log my array, it will have changed. That is mutative. All of our applicatives are non-mutative. So if let me show you a non-mutative one. What if I do dot concat with, I don't know, like, we'll do that there. Okay. Well, that's weird. Let me console.log this thing here. So that means that this term is exactly what I want it to be, but I did not change the original one. I just created a new one. Okay? That's what non-mutative means. That means that every time you're using these applicatives, you're creating something new. It's not going to change the original variable unless you explicitly change it. That's the first thing. Applicatives are all non-mutative. The next thing. Applicatives all take a callback function. All except a callback function as its argument. Cool. What does that mean? Somebody explain to me what that means. I think I just realized that the Flatiron logo is commented out JavaScript. That just blew my mind. Is that what that is? Is that what you think it is?
Yeah, I guess that makes sense. I never thought about that though.
That's what I'm thinking. Well, that's my random nugget of the day. Okay, anyways, sorry, that like tripped me out major time. Okay, so what does this mean? Since you were the only one that responded, Brad, what does it mean that applicatives all accept a callback function as an argument?
Sorry, I just got in here. I'm not sure what that means actually. You said applicatives?
So,
Okay.
I probably should clarify that. I'm going to use the word applicative as if it's like an enumerable for JavaScript. So, applicative.
Oh, so numerals are all non-destructive is what you're saying?
Yep, they're all non-destructive. And we're also going to say applicatives are going to be enumerables but JavaScript enumerables is what I'll call them. Cool. All right, so what does this mean? They all accept a callback function as its argument.
it's going to take an argument of a function that's already created.
I don't like that's already created. I'll show you why in a bit. But for now, we're going to say takes a function as an argument. Great. Sweet. And I think that's pretty much all we need to remember. Oh, I want to do one more, which is that the callback functions do different things depending on the applicative. Cool. Let's start with a dot map. I'm going to show y'all some stuff and then prod you. So I'm going to start with an array. So I'm just going to say const my array equals the good old 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I want to create a doubled version of this array. What would I do if I wanted to double each term? Which applicative would I use? In Ruby, which enumerable would I use?
You want a map.
Cool. So I'm going to do a console.log, and inside of here, we're going to say my array dot map. What goes inside of here? What is the argument to an applicative always?
The variable you're iterating over?
Nope.
Singular? Just like
Nope.
the element, essentially.
What does this say?
Oh, function.
A function. A
All that
function goes here. Right? This might be some mind-blowing stuff. I'm going to create a function called double. I haven't written double yet. I'm going to write one now. We're going to say function double. Bam. Bam. Now what I'm going to do is what this callback function accepts depends on the iterative that you're using. So in this case, I'm using a map. So the thing that this callback function is going to accept, there's two things. The element that I'm on and the index that I'm on. So what we'll do is we're going to console.log element and index for now. Element, and I'll do this. I'll do a string here. So actually I'll say console.log. I am going to say element is bam, bam, element. And then I'm just going to copy this, and I'm just going to say index is there. Index. Let's see what this does right now. Okay. So when I map this, right, it went through and it plugged in my array into this function. And what it did was it went through each term in my array. And for the first term, it plugged in the element is 1 and the index is 0. Then it returned whatever this function returns. Can somebody tell me why I have an array of undefined as my final result?
Because
I'm going to re-say the sentence that I just said, and maybe this will give it away. Okay? What I do is I'm iterating through each element of the array, and in the returned version of this element is going to become whatever the function of this element returns. So I could actually get rid of this index, and it would work fine if I got rid of like the index there. Or this should say index. But let's just worry about element for now and not worry about index, right? So let's talk about what this is doing. When I say map my array, map is a function that accepts a callback function. So what map does on the outside is it says, what's the first term? Okay, cool. The first term is a 1. What do I want to return? I want to return some function of 1 because I just want to transform this whole array. So I need to figure out some block of code to put 1 through to get my return value, right? So if I go here, let's think about this for a second. And I'm just going to kind of reiterate the same thing over and over and over again. I'm doing a myArray.map. When I do a .map, I'm pulling out the first element. Then I'm saying, what function do I want to plug that into? I want to plug that into this callback function called double. When I plug it into double, all double is saying right now is console.log it. But what does the new array, let's say this makes a new array, what does the first term get populated with? The first term gets populated with double 1. What is double of 1 return right now?
Undefined, it just logs to the console.
Exactly, it's undefined. So because we have not specified a return, for each of these elements, we're plugging them in and we're getting the exact same thing that we're getting undefined because we have not defined a return. Junior, spit that back to me.
Every time we plug it into that function, we're bringing back undefined because it hasn't been, I guess, created.
Let's put it this way. A map is going to do this. Let's say I put in a callback. I'm just going to make this more general and call it a callback. So let's call this callback. Let's say my array equals, I'm going to say my array, this is going to be some pseudocode here in general. This is a generalized version. My array, and then .map of a callback. What this becomes is going to be this. Callback, let's say my array equals 1, 2, 3 right now, right? What this becomes is callback of 1, callback of 2, callback of 3. This is how a map works. It transforms this into this. Whatever that callback is, whatever this turns into, that's what it becomes.
And then it'll just execute the code from the callback function on each 1, 2, 3, 4.
Exactly. So a really good practice to understand this concept is you could actually try making a map function. So for example, maybe instead of it being a .map, I will say map, and then I will say my array, and then maybe like a callback function, right? So this will be like a generalized way that an actual map would look. So let's say I do a function map. Let's open that up. What am I going to return? I'm going to return an array. So let's say I have this array. I could do like a for loop or something like that for, I don't know, each term of the array. So I could say for element of array. This is just going back to our previous lesson, right? I'm going to make a return array here. So let return array equals, and this is really more for demonstration. This is not like a good way of doing this ever, right? Because you already have that code that someone wrote for you. But just to show you kind of the concept here, I could do a return array dot push, and then I would literally do callback invoked at this element, right? And now I would just return my return array. And if anybody wants, I'll copy and paste this code just so maybe you can like take some time to read through it later if you want to. Let's go to Zoom. Let's see. Oh shit, how do I go to the chat? View, show chat. Close chat, view, show chat. Oh, the chat was right there. Cool. If anybody wants that code, that's kind of like it written out. But let's see if it works. I probably should have made sure that it works first. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and write map. And we're going to do, our array will be 1, 2, 3. And then I'm going to create a function with an input of for each number. And I am going to say return number times 2. And we're going to see if we double this. And I got to console log that to check to see if it worked. And I know I went fast there, but I did want to check my map function. Looks like I fucked something up. I think it might, it's not supposed to be an in. For element of array. Wonder if I messed anything up. Not log. Oh, I just wrote return array here. I didn't do return array. There we go. So it is working. So what I suggest, if you really want to understand callback functions, run through this and see if you can understand it. Okay? Because this is like at heart what all of these things are doing. Even enumerables in Ruby are doing something like this. They're doing it with do end blocks instead of, you know, callback functions, but it's a really similar concept.
Can you throw the new version of that in the chat real quick?
It's you literally just put return in front of return array.
Oh, my bad.
Yeah, sorry. At the end, you just have to return the return array.
Okay.
I think that would be a really cool thing to dissect and try and understand. Now let's talk about the other enumerables that you're going to have to learn. Cool. So the other enumerables that you're going to have to learn. Before we do that, though, let's do a quick check for understanding. Junior, are applicatives mutative?
No, not all of them, but they can be.
Nope, none of them are. It's okay. All right. Bradley, what do all of the applicatives accept as one of their arguments?
A callback function?
Callback function, great. Some of them do have another argument. Specifically, reduce has another argument.
The accumulator, right?
The initialized value of the accumulator.
Ah,
The accumulator is actually an argument to the callback function, not to the reduce. We can worry about that another day. I think reduce is probably one of the more complicated ones. Awesome. What else do we have? Eric, are our applicatives mutative? What else do we got?
Non-mutative, non-destructive. That means the same thing.
Yep. Yeah, I think so. I'm not 100% sure. Let's check it. Mutative versus destructive. That's not what I wanted. I want to say that they mean the same thing. That'd be a good Kyle question. Cool. So if you want, I'm going to keep this lesson short because I don't want it to be like a full ass lesson that only like half the people came to. But if you guys want practice, what you can do is try making a map function, try making a for each function, and try making a filter function. Try making those to where you can type in for each inside of your array, run this callback. Filter for each in this array, run a callback. I think that that is the best way to understand this, and it's kind of fun once you get it working, but it's a brain stretch. So what I would say is, why don't y'all try doing that? And maybe you could even like open your own Zoom room or something like that. And if y'all need help, you can call me in there. It's pretty fucking cool. Unless y'all are feeling behind on other shit, you can do that too. Like if you're feeling like, oh, I need to understand strong params or something like that, it's totally fine to put this on the back seat. I mean, as a student, your goal is to prioritize all these different things, and it's not expected that you learn all of it at once. I think this is a great way of learning this stuff, though, if you want to try it that way. That's how a lot of this stuff clicked for me, was like realizing that I could do that. And then now there's a level of like, it just makes a whole bunch of shit make more sense, is the best way I could describe it. I would say don't obsess with it so much, though, that you don't learn anything else. Just like maybe try spending 30 minutes on it or something. In fact, why don't we just do that right now? Well, how about everybody just spends 30 minutes? I want everybody to try and make let's just do a for each function. It's even easier than the map. So I want you to make a function that accepts an array and a callback, and it does the exact same thing that a dot for each does. I won't even put y'all into breakout rooms. Y'all can just, if someone wants to share screen and y'all want to like work together, I'll just kind of be a ghost on the side and pop in if you need me. How's that sound? Cool. Go
That's
for it.
cool. You guys want me to share?
Sounds good.
All right. Just have this here so far. Hold on a second. Let me pull this up. That's not what I needed. I needed something else. Okay. So we're going to use a for each. And it takes in an element and a function. Sean said was callback.
So why don't you first try doing something with a regular for each, and then the goal is to create a for each function for yourself. So first try doing something like make a callback that maybe like console logs everything or something. And the goal of doing it, like do it the original way and then make your own for each plugin for your own for each function. And then what you can do is you can put yourself in a situation where you can deconstruct how it works. But first make an example with a for each that works.
Okay.
So then in there, drop in my array.
Inside the parentheses.
Actually, hold on. Actually, let's do number, I guess, because we are going to be working on a number.
Yeah. The my array part of that would be in the beginning of your sentence there, because you're doing my array dot for each. Just syntax than the way you're going to wind it up.
Sorry, John, can you say that again? You cut out for a second.
Yeah, I think my internet's shit. So oh man, brain fart. I'm hitting that like 2:30 brain deadery. So the my array part of that, Junior, is actually already there. It's just at the beginning of it. And the way that we're going to be rewriting it is going to be a totally different syntax. Can y'all hear me?
Got it. So essentially, what you want us to do is put the for each on my array that we have up there. So the 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you want us just to make a for each that
Sure.
goes on that array.
Sure, just do a callback here. Like, in other words, just do something right now just to do a regular for each. And then I want you to make a for each function that does almost the same thing, but with a different syntax. So you're going to be making your own for each. So you're going to call it function for each.
All right.
And because you're not starting it with like my array dot for each, you have to pass it in as an argument. So maybe pass in the array as an argument. And then you're also going to pass in the callback as an argument. I would not do my array. I would do an array more generally in this case, because it generally accepts an array, not a specific array. Right?
Okay.
Cool. Now, what does a for each function actually loop through and do?
It will return each number in the array, or each element in the array.
What does a for each return?
It returns each index modified, each element modified.
A for each actually does not return anything. All of
So
for
then
each
we would need to
does,
set up a new array in there. to call
Nope.
back.
Nope. It's even easier than that. All a for each does is invoke the callback at each element in the array. That's all it does. Give it a shot. See if you could do that.
I'm gonna have to pull up my notes here. Give me a second.
Sure. I love the enthusiasm. And while y'all are doing that, I'm going to check up on some studs. Except for my shit is running archaically slow.
Okay.
So what does for each do? Let's actually just talk real quick about what's going on here. You have this callback function inside of your for each, right? Your callback function starts where your for each opens and ends where your for each ends. Go actually to the right. Like go to the, yeah, go there, right? So that's the start of your for each argument. Whoops. The end to your argument, like the block starts here and ends here. And all that it's doing is for every element inside of that array, it's invoking this function on the inside. So how are you going to code for that? By making something similar, except for you're inputting my array as an argument. If y'all feel like this is not productive, we could do something else too and switch to something more practical that's just like, hey, how do I map over something? But
So would you just console.log the array?
Is it going to be so console.log is what you chose to do in that circumstance. But what if you want to do something else? Maybe I want to populate something on a page. Maybe I want to, there could be a whole bunch of stuff that you do with a for each that is not actually just console logging, right? We don't know what you want to do with that callback, but you can do a console log. But if you put a console log there, then you have to do a console log. What is your function? What is the function argument called that actually contains that console log?
The callback function?
The callback function, right? So you had a callback function, and inside of that callback function, you console.log the input to that callback function, right?
Okay, so then I need to make a callback function.
You need to invoke the callback function argument that you have there. So the whole point of making this is that someone else defines, nope, not there. The whole point of making this is that someone else is creating the callback function and you're just creating a way for them to iterate over it, right? So here's what I want. I'm just going to I'll cheat with you a little bit. And then after that, I think we'll probably switch to something a little less theoretical, but maybe bear this in mind. So what I want you to do is say callback, right? So you need to create some way of iterating and actually calling that callback for each element in the array. What did we talk about in the lesson before this? How do you go through each element of an array without like a dot for each? What's another way you could do that?
You can for through it or do while, like create a loop through it.
Yeah, so how about you just do a for loop on the array?
Okay. So would I do array and set it equal to that?
Nope. All I need you to do is do a for loop so you could pull out each element of the array. There's a few ways you could do it.
So I almost set this up the same way you did the map. Essentially, it was just like for parentheses element of array parentheses.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that would be easier, but let's follow this way too. Would it be I is less than 5? How do you get what can you do to replace that 5 in case I had a different size array? What if I had an array of 6 and I plugged that in there? Remember, your function doesn't know anything about array until you invoke it. There you go. Cool. And then also that second comma Comma needs to be a semicolon. Cool. Great. Now I want you to open up that for loop with curly braces. Right? Now, what did we say that a for each does? It invokes the callback function on each element of the array. So how do you index that element of, how do you pull out the element of that array inside of that for loop? Let's say you're in the for loop, you're at index 0. How do you index my array at index 0?
Would you do element brackets I?
Element brackets I? Where's element coming from?
Let's do array, right?
Oh,
Yeah, I think your way probably you did have elements though. Cool. So why don't you say that that equals element or something like that? Like let element equals array of I. Right? Cool. And then what I want you to do is invoke the callback function with element. So move that up a line. Nope, that should be inside of your for loop. Cool. Tab that in. All right, so let's walk through what this is doing. If I have an array, I'm iterating through each term of that array, and I am figuring out what the element is. So for example, let's say I started at 2 here. I would have 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, but I'm actually starting at 0, so the index is the exact same as the element. But that usually would not be the case. But anyways, okay. So now what you're doing is this is your value at the index, and all you're doing is you're invoking this callback with that value. That's all a for each is. So now here's what I want you to do. Go down on your code, go to the very end, and I want you to type in for each. And remember, this is your function that you just made. Open it up. So open it up with, no, you're opening it up with parentheses because it's a function.
Gotcha.
You're plugging in, your array is going to be my array. And then your callback could be exactly the same as you wrote it in your other code. Go to your other code for a second. So I want you to highlight everything inside of the parentheses of the for each. Everything inside of there. Nope, inside of the parentheses of the for each. Yep. Without actually the last parenthesis. You're missing the beginning one now. One less over. Just hold shift and left arrow.
Just shift and the left there. Okay.
There you go. Now copy that. And paste that in as the second argument to your for each. And let's see what it does. Hey, look at that. It did the exact same thing that it did in your real for each function. But this time it's like a fake for each that you just made. Did that help anyone? Did that help anyone understand kind of like callbacks and why they're used?
I'm good up until the very last part that we did.
Okay. That's okay. It takes a long time to kind of get this stuff.
Like the function for each, the array callback, and then let element equal array, and then pass that variable as an argument into our callback function. That all makes sense, but the for each, my array, and then element index and all that stuff is what just lost me.
Well, it'd be tough for me to like go over all of that with y'all right now. I think what would maybe be a good idea would be, let me steal the screen back real quick, and I am going to I'm going to show y'all some like map filter stuff. That's a rabbit hole that's tough to go down, and I think it takes a few times of going down it to understand it. So let me go ahead and share now. And I'm going to go to, let's see, not typing skills. Cool. Dude. So let's talk about a few different operations we could do. I'm going to make a bigger array. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5, and then we'll do 6, 6, 7, 7, 8, 8, 9, 9. Cool. Whatever. That way it's not all obvious. So, my butt hurts. I haven't gotten out of this chair all day. All right. So what iterables do y'all know? What applicatives have y'all heard of that probably exist in JavaScript?
Map, for each, and filter.
Okay, so we have map, for each, filter. Love it. Map.
Reduce.
Cool. What else? Reduce. Cool. Anything else? That's fine if that's all you know. There's also sort. There's also what else?
Is dot length one?
Length is not an applicative. Length is a property of an array.
Yeah, that's right.
You know how you could tell the difference between a property and a method on it? If I do console.log my array.length, I don't have to invoke it. In JavaScript, you have to invoke a method. So maybe I would be like myArray or like at 0.2string. And I know that this is a method because I have to invoke it, right? But .length, I'm just indexing out a property of it.
Okay.
But anyways, all right, so let's go over some of these. A map takes a callback function that accepts, I'm going to say of the form, and now I'm going to do something like this. Callback of element, and then returns like transformed element. That's how a map works. This is REPL being weird right now. You also might see it like this. Element, return equation of element. Like, for example, maybe element times 2. This is just a different syntax for this. Cool. Let's prove it. I'm just going to say myArray.map, and then I am going to literally throw in exactly like I have up there. Element times 2. Cool. That worked. Awesome. Let's prove that the other way works too. So I'm going to make a callback. I'm going to make it double. It takes in an element, and all I'm going to do is say return element times 2. And now I should be able to put double in here instead of all that. Bam. Awesome. So that's a map. We're going to ignore for each for right now because we spent a whole bunch of time on that. A
Wait, so-
filter.
So you're showing us these callbacks. I mean, it seems like the what do you call it? The applicative? What's the name for enumerable? Is more efficient though.
Oh, definitely. You want to use the applicative, but you're using all these applicatives take a callback as their argument. So watch, ready? It is more efficient. Guess what? This form, this is still a callback function. If I were to go to a node terminal, I'm going to do it right now. If I go to a terminal and I type in this, guess what? That is a function. What kind of function is that?
An anonymous.
That's an anonymous function. So for example, let's say I make that function again. I'm going to say double is my function. I'm going to call it double. Function, double, and then I'm going to do this. It accepts a number, and it returns number times 2, right? Cool. So if I type in double right now, what is it? It's a function. Cool. So I'm going to type in double and then maybe put in 2, and it's going to return 4, right? But guess what? I can replace all of that with an anonymous function. So my anonymous function looks of the form like this, right? Which looks really similar, just without a function keyword. My input argument is going to be my number, just like before. And then all I'm going to do is return number times 2. The only difference is, because this is an anonymous function, I can't store it as a variable name. So instead, what I would have to do is invoke it right here just to prove to you that it even works. And hey, look, that works as well. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It's really trippy, and it's a hard concept to grasp. But this, the only difference between this double function and this double function, the only difference between those is that this one is named and this one is not.
So, and because that one has a name, you can call that function whenever you want, whereas the one that's anonymous,
It's
you have
locked
to
into
invoke it
existence.
right then and there.
Exactly. So it works great for a callback function because when I'm doing a map, right, all it needs is the actual function. It doesn't need to know the pointer to like where in memory is it. It just needs to know, okay, what do you want me to do to this thing? So if I say number and then return number times 2, right? I agree that that looks cleaner. I think it's easier to read because then I don't have to go up and look at a double function somewhere. So I 100% agree. But it's also, when you look at it like this, it makes it more mysterious. It makes it like, I don't really understand what I'm looking at. Maybe this is just the syntax for a map. But actually what it is that you're just inputting a function there. It's a really trippy concept, but the sooner you understand it, it will unlock things for you if you kind of can grasp that concept. It's tough. And I think in like the applicative lesson that I teach tomorrow, I'm not going to try and go as deep into that. I'm going to be more like, here's how you do this. Here's how you do that. But I figured since it was like kind of like extra time, it would be worth trying to dig through that tough concept.
So in this, what you're doing right now, the myArray.map, within those parentheses, you're invoking map, which looks like a function, but inside that is the callback function that you're running. So that's the number.
All of this is one argument. This is one argument to my map function. And all of this equates to being a function.
So with that though, since the one-liner, you don't essentially need the return or the curly braces, right?
No, you don't need the return or the curly braces. I just wanted to like eliminate the levels of confusion there.
So by invoking a map, you essentially have some like meta function already built out in the JavaScript program that calls the callback function.
Exactly. Map itself is a function. And that's kind of what I was trying to show you before by literally writing a map function for you. That map is doing what we're doing. It's invoking the callback as an argument, right? So is that code still in the chat? I'm just going to copy and paste it if it is, because maybe talking through that will help. Where's my chat? Sorry, Zoom kind of blows sometimes. There we go. So I do have it in the chat. So this is kind of like, really, I think the best way to demonstrate what's going on under the hood, right? Oh God, that looks hideous. Less hideous. Less hideous. Less hideous. Less hideous. Less hideous. And then I need to return that. Okay, cool. It's not hideous anymore. That was impossible to look at. All right, so let's look at this for a second, okay? What does it do? A map, we created this function. All it's doing is it's iterating through every term in the array. It's figuring out what does this callback give me, and it's pushing it to a new array and returning that new array. Take some time to just look at that and let it simmer for a second. It's really, this is, I think, the best way to understand how these iterables are working under the hood. And I do think it's important because you're actually going to run into debugging times where if you understand this, it's going to make your life easier. I promise you.
Yeah, this is cool. It makes sense now. It's completely making sense now.
So in this example, what is the callback? Is the callback whatever you're doing to that element in the array?
Exactly. So
So this times 2 is going to be the callback. The
Right.
number times 2 is the
So the
callback.
whole reason why this exists is because I want to be able to apply different callbacks to the same array. Maybe I don't want to double it. Maybe I want to multiply it by 5. Maybe I want to return an array of ducks, right? The point is that I'm using this callback to figure out what I want the new term to be. It's kind of cool. Once it clicks, it feels really good. This is one of those concepts that's tough, but when it clicks, it feels awesome. My suggestion would be to like sit there and stare at it and let it simmer. It's not a lot of times that I would suggest that. I think this might be one of those things that I needed to like sit down and really analyze it. And what's interesting is once I figured it out for map and really understood it for map, the other ones made perfect sense to me because it was just like, oh, like a callback. I see why we're doing that. But it's like it all kind of clicked at once, but it's tough. It's kind of, you got to kind of wrestle with it on why it's there. Try really hard to walk through each line of code. Maybe like call it in a few different times. And just by the way, to prove to you that this will work, right? My map function takes in an array. So I'm going to put in my array here. And guess what? I get the same array. It works. It's a tough one. And I'm not going to go into it this way tomorrow. Today was really more of like a, I don't know why. I think it was so impromptu. I wound up going like a little bit more towards the theory side of things on why it's working. Tomorrow is going to be more of like here's the syntax of an iterable. And it's going to be more of like, how do you do something or accomplish something? This was more of a how does this work lesson because nobody told me to even do a lesson right now. So, and I enjoy it. Like that's definitely bleeding into this, is that I think that this is one of the cooler things that I learned.
See, the big block of code with the function map, like I'm not grasping that, but I can grasp why like myArray.map and then you pass in double makes sense.
So if you can grasp that, this is not that much of an abstraction. Basically, the reason why we did it this way is because making a dot map method involves object-oriented programming and is like a whole nother concept that I just don't want to go into right now. So instead, what I did was I just made a function where instead of calling like my array dot map and then your argument being the callback, all I did was switch the order, and I said, what if I had the same thing where I just did map on my array and put the callback in here, and it outputs the same exact thing. It's just because it's easier to see. This is more transparent code, and I think easier to follow along with. Also, this is how a map actually, this is actually how you call a map in some other languages. Python, for example, that's their syntax for map. Actually, I think it goes callback and then array for Python, but whatever. It doesn't matter. The order that I chose was just the order I chose. It's not necessarily right or wrong. If this is super stressful, don't stress over it. Just be focused on like learning what you're supposed to learn on JavaScript. What I can say is if you can nail callback functions, it makes event listeners easier. It makes promises easier. It makes maps easier, filters, reduce. It makes all of those easier. If you can really grasp the idea of what a callback function is, why they exist, and when you use them, you are going to be making your life a lot easier in the long run. Rather than just trying to stress out about syntax all the time, you will be able to follow things much better. All right, I'm gonna call it for this lesson. I gotta take a break. I've been like going.
Thank you, John. Really appreciate it.
All right, no.
John, I have a question.
Hopefully that was
very much.
cool. Tomorrow I'll do an applicatives lesson that's more along the lines of here's how you would do it in a code in like our coding challenge kind of thing. So it's gonna be it's gonna be a little bit more like structured, like this is an assignment. I do think it's worth keeping this in the back of your mind though, because it really will help contextualize a lot of JavaScript stuff, including when you get to React. So when you get to React, React is all JavaScript as well. All right, I gotta go. Later.
Thanks.
All right, later, John.